The significant influence that both jazz and spirituality have had on Minneapolis resident Steve Blons throughout his life have compelled him for the last 10 years to practice the two blended together. In the fall of 2001, as members of the Hennepin Avenue United Methodist Church, guitarist Steve Blons, saxman Brad Holden, and pianist Laura Cavani began performing a regular monthly series of jazz meditations under the name Soul Café. Soul Café then blossomed into a formal ensemble, playing around the Twin Cities and producing 2 CDs, music of which you're listening to now. In addition to Soul Café, Blons joined forces with Michelle McKenzie in producing a weekly radio program, Jazz in the Spirit. You can listen to a live simulcast online. Through interviews and music with local and national artists, Michelle and Steve pieced together the spiritual history of jazz. Okay, so have a look at the inspiring setting where I met with Steve, the upstairs art gallery at the church.
We now understand that the universe wasn't just created once and then has just been running on its own ever since, but that the creative process in the natural world is ongoing. That new stars are being born all the time. Matter just sort of pops out of the apparent empty void, spontaneously. There's a predisposition for creative emergence built into the fabric of the universe. So to somehow participate in that is to participate in kind of a primal energy. And whether or not you call it God, it certainly is at the heart of things. So to me, the word spiritual makes sense. So I want to tell you about something I learned just recently in an interview we were doing for our radio series, Jazz in the Spirit. So we're having these conversations with a variety of people about the connection that they make as musicians between their spirituality and their music. And the person we were talking to happens to be, have a pretty rich faith experience and spiritual practice. We were talking about the core skill of a jazz musician is listening. That listening is really where the art happens fundamentally, because it's very much an in-the-moment process as an improviser, as a music improviser. And to be present and in the moment, you have to be very attentive to everything that's going on. When you're able to listen deeply, you're able to play at the highest level. And when your playing kind of falls apart, it's because you've been distracted out of that place. And so the connection I made was, well, we're talking about listening in these two different contexts, but aren't they really the same thing? The listening that I may be trying to do in my spiritual practice of meditation or centering prayer, which is a kind of placing myself as much as I can in the moment without being distracted by my own thoughts even, so that I can receive whatever the universe is trying to give me. Yeah. That place of receptivity and openness is exactly the place from which the creative energy comes as a jazz musician when I'm really in the flow. Right. It's the same state of being. I was asked to play a wedding party for a musician, a fabulous, just top-notch jazz musician. So I was a little surprised when he called me and said, could you play at our wedding reception? I said, oh yeah, I'd be delighted, that'd be great, thanks. So I got to this, it was at a restaurant in St. Paul, and I walked into the restaurant, and it wasn't until I walked in the door and began looking around the room that it occurred to me that, of course, the room would be full of all the best jazz musicians in the Twin Cities. And so I had this just rush of anxiety, this panic attack happened. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to play in this room full of all these brilliant players. How in the world can I possibly do this? Right. And then almost immediately, this thought came to me, this little voice came to me, and it said, well, it's too late to get better now. It was extremely comforting. Like, well, okay, obviously, if I thought I should be better, I should have been doing this work years and years ago. This is who I am. This is all I can bring. I just have to bring what I am, who I am, and offer it in celebration of this guy's wedding. Yeah. No, I thought of it. Well, he invited me. He's heard me play. I mean, he could have said, "No, I don't want this guy at my." He said, "No."
Steve's father was a successful Dixieland musician named Harry Blons, who nonetheless warned him to stay away from the life of a professional musician. Despite Steve's gravitating to the guitar early on and playing gigs by 16, he went on to pursue degrees in mathematics, education, and counseling. He also earned a certificate in theological studies from the Jesuit School of Theology at Berkeley. His Jewish upbringing and subsequent conversion to Christianity have given him a broadly ecumenical perspective, serving him well as a spiritual and retreat leader, sometimes collaborating with his wife, Jan Butcher. In fact, that's how I know him, from my early childhood attending Hennepin Avenue United Methodist Church, where he has remained all these years as a counselor. My family moved away when I was 10, but to come back and meet Steve in this breathtaking church meant a lot to me 30 years later.
One of the things that's become really clear to me in my own artistic life, my own creative process, is how much of what I do is collaborative. And how I've come to really seek out and trust the collaborative process to produce something much more interesting than I would have come up with on my own. When I'm given an assignment and I have to do it completely by myself, it's much harder these days to wrap my arms around it. I think that at least my concept of what the artistic life is like is that it's solitary. It's just you and this medium, these tools of yours. In place of collaboration, in place of having other people to sort of bang around on this stuff, what I discovered emerged was a kind of obsessiveness. When it was just me, and I had this problem, and there was really no one to consult with, I just found myself obsessing. I mean, literally waking at 3 in the morning and going downstairs and grabbing my guitar and thinking, oh, maybe this would be the solution to this. And I have to say that if I had to choose, I would choose the collaborative process over the obsessive process. I sort of feel a little odd because I don't think collaboration is typical. For example, I don't think Mozart talked to anybody, so I don't think it's so much a medium as it is some kind of temperamental kind of predisposition. This person that I was interviewing, he quoted Miles Davis, who said, if you can get 20 just amazing seconds of music a month, and we're talking about people who are playing this music at the highest level. Miles Davis says, yeah, maybe 8 measures a month I'm really happy with. I really feel like the music was really happening. When I have those moments, being really present in the flow and know that information is passing between me and the other musicians and something is happening in the music that's never happened before, that it is like being in a spiritual epiphany, close to a source of some kind, close to some transcendent energy or power, something that's happening in me but coming from someplace outside of me. People who meditate know how hard it is to really be present. So if you get 5 seconds of purity out of an hour of sitting, maybe that's a good day of meditation as well. So we can't really stay in that place. So how is it that small a dose of whatever this is can be so nourishing, so sustaining? What is there about it that is so satisfying, that's so grounding? When, as a musician, you hear yourself play something, or somebody you're with plays a note or a phrase, what happens in those fleeting moments is suddenly your life becomes embedded in this much larger context, and it lends a sense of, I don't know if it's meaning, or if it's just a sense of belonging that happens. And just a little bit of that can sustain you. One of the things that I've read frequently over the last, especially 15, 20 years, is the idea that the role of the human in the universe can be seen this way, that it's the universe awakening to itself. So the universe evolves consciousness, which then reflects back on the universe and says, wow, what an amazing place this is. What a beautiful place this is. Which, the more I've thought about it, leads me to think that the universe is this really narcissistic entity, or that God is very narcissistic and just, oh, look at me, isn't this great, you know? And until there's a consciousness that can do that, the universe doesn't get to kind of wallow in its own beauty, its own glory.